You know, once you learn that the default cube in Blender is a 2-meter cube, it becomes kinda easy to prototype levels, because whenever you add one, you can always think to yourself that this is roughly human height. An average human is would be around here, 175. So 75% of the height of this cube is a human. And then you can use that to create rooms that have realistic proportions, right? So this would be 4-meter ceiling height, and door would usually be at 2-meter something, or I can make it higher if I want to make sort of like a hallway. And let's see, I can assign some emissive material to ceilings for lighting. And can also add collision to it with a call hint for Godot. And then I can export it to Godot. And let's see what happened here. Oh, I should reset its position. And re-export, and we should have sort of like a small walkable level. I forgot to assign the material to ceilings. Okay, here we go. I talked a little bit to a couple of people on Discord about using Blender for level blockouts. And we talked a little bit about trench broom and hammer. And personally, I can't see how I would have a better time prototyping levels in trench broom compared to Blender because of all of the modeling tools that it has, both built-in and my own custom tools. Well, okay, there are some things in Blender that make it kinda suck for first-person games in general. For levels for first-person games, WASD navigation, for example, is super clunky. Like, even simply looking around feels kind of janky. Also, there is, of course, no acceleration when you start moving. So even with this add-on that I installed that allows you to press and hold right mouse button to navigate and stops navigating when you release it, it's still very, very clunky. And also modeling with ceilings is a little bit janky because now, even though I have backface culling enabled and the material has backface culling enabled, if you try to add a cube, for example, you will be adding it to the roof. I did discover that if X-ray is enabled and if you hold Control to snap, then you will actually snap inside of the room. But yeah, only if you both have X-ray enabled and hold Control. If you don't have X-ray enabled, it won't actually snap to inside of the room. So yeah, and once you have something inside of the room, it becomes a little bit easier because then you can select, if you have X-ray enabled, you can select the face and you can start orbiting around it. That will kind of place you inside of the room. So you should be able to add other things. So yeah, there are ways to do it, but it's not always super convenient or super obvious how to do these things in Blender. Technically, Alt B is also an option. It allows you to sort of cull everything that you don't want to see, and then you can add cubes with no problem. But Alt B becomes kind of exhausting after a while when you constantly need to press it. And it also doesn't work in material preview mode. which is kind of a big deal because constantly having to switch between solid and material preview is just not great. But those issues aside, Blender actually seems pretty great for level blockouts. It does pretty much what Hammer can do and more. And keep in mind that I haven't used Hammer myself. Actually, I don't think I have ever even opened Hammer Editor in my life. But I do sometimes watch videos, like tutorials on YouTube on Hammer, just for research, just to see what kind of tooling I might be missing in Blender. Most of the things can be done either with Blender's default functionality, or in some cases with add-ons. Like I already said, some tools I made myself for my add-on, whatever I couldn't find in Blender. Like in general, I just make a tool for it myself. Usually it's with geometry nodes. I would make a node tool. Sometimes for some tools I had to use Python. One thing that I still haven't figured out, and I probably want to in the future, is tile meshes, but it's probably doable with geometry nodes. What's interesting about Hammer is that not a lot of people are actually talking about it on YouTube. Like when you search Hammer on YouTube, a lot of videos are gonna be 10 years old. Even though I hear a lot on social media, on Twitter, I hear a lot about how great Hammer is, which is, at least to some extent, the reason why I'm so interested to learn about it, to see what kind of tools it has. But then also, to be fair, for every comment that's saying that Hammer is great, I also hear a lot of comments saying that Hammer is terrible and it's just the worst thing that ever happened to them. So I don't know. But overall, the workflow is pretty much the same. It's just cutting things, extruding things. UV workflow is probably a little bit worse in Blender out of the box, but I do have an operator in my add-on that allows you to rotate UVs 90 degrees without opening the UV editor, offset UVs, scale UVs, basic stuff like that. And also I have an operator to straighten UVs, so if you have curved geometry, you would still have nice UVs on that. And my add-on is completely free, but it is also not the only free add-on that allows you to do that. I think UV Squares is also free, and it probably can do the thing better. I haven't checked though, but if it can straighten multiple islands at once, then it's better than what I currently have. Snapping wasn't the strongest feature of Blender for a long time, but it is slowly improving, because it is now easier to snap vertex to vertex since Blender 4. And Blender 4.2 finally added configurable angle snapping. So yeah, it's slowly getting there. We're getting basic snapping features. Oh, one thing that I think is really cool in the new Hammer is the ability to preview lighting if you have an RTX card, because baking the whole thing just for preview is really slow. And sometimes baking at low resolution just doesn't tell you the whole story. It probably would have been nice to have an option in Godot to bake only what's currently visible through the viewport camera, because it would have been more convenient than to disable some parts of the map, because sometimes it's not even that easy to disable some parts of the map. I also sometimes hear some people saying that it would be nice to have modeling tools in Engine itself, which is absolutely true. In a perfect world, I think you would have the entire modeling toolset of Blender in Godot, or the game engine like Godot in Blender, so that you don't need all of the intermediate files and stuff. But it's just a lot of work to make those tools. I mean, Unreal seems to be trying to be sort of like an all-in-one app, and it has some basic modeling tools from what I can tell. But the thing is, it can be enough for like basic blockouts, It can get there. Godot can have tools that are good enough for basic blockouts, but in the end, you still need to do an art pass on that. So if you're like an indie developer and it's all on you, or maybe if you're like an art director and you want to do a quick prototype yourself, like maybe both level geometry and some basic art, to see what it should look like, to have some sort of vertical slice of the whole thing, then you would be modeling in 2 apps at once. Because you might need like at least some advanced stuff. You might need node tools, you might need some basic sculpting, maybe some, geometry nodes, terrain generation, or stuff like that. And so the way I see it is, if you are still going to be using Blender, then it seems easier to just do everything in Blender, including blockouts, and, just figure out a workflow that is good enough for you to exchange information between Blender and Godot fast enough. And then Blender will just kind of become the source of truth for everything minus interactivity.